Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and man, do we have a huge show set up for you today. We got Devin Brown, Buckeye quarterback on. We had Will Howard. Want to talk to all of these guys. You'll see everything that's going on. Going to be excited to catch up with Devin and everything that he's doing during the little break week here, as they're going to have some time off around the 4th of July from workouts before they really ramp it up. Joshua going in to the final 3 weeks before the start of camp. EA Sports releases their new team ratings for their college football game. They've got offense, they've got defense. Are the Buckeyes too high? Are they too low? Are they just right? Gene Smith officially retiring as of July 1st. He will be out, and Ross Bjork will officially take over that role. We got our questions from our listeners with a little tailgate talk. But first, the NCAA finally passed a rule that seemed like the most logical thing that should have happened. There's a couple different iterations of it, but what they did was, now that all people on staff, because this was not the case before, everybody on staff is able to provide, Joshua, I think the line is both tactical and technical instruction for the players during practice and games. And it's eliminating the old rule of the 11 coaches on the field that were able to provide instruction. I think maybe plus a couple grad assistants, but now you can have your quality control. You can have your analysts. Everybody out there is allowed to be able to provide instruction to the players. And honestly, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I think for recruiting on the road, I still think that you have to have the accountable coaches there.
Yep.
But in terms of practice and games, let's be honest here. Everybody was already doing this. Everybody was already breaking this rule. And the punishment for it was like, oh, you get a little slap on the wrist. Just don't do it again. So the idea that we can legitimize it, I think, is awesome. I think this number one, it helps to justify some of the expense of these athletic departments, because some of the analyst salaries that I've seen, guys getting paid $300K, and you can't even coach on the field. It's absolutely wild. So let them do their job.
Yes.
This also benefits the student athlete in a lot of ways, because you can get more individualized instruction. When it's not just when you come off the field, you got to go find the analyst. Like, that guy can be involved in drill work and as you're going through the periods of practice. The other thing is, I talked to a cat who son was getting recruited by Alabama, and he made this statement to me that Nick Saban essentially had a coach for every player that was on the roster. Right? like this is how bloated some of these athletic departments, like the coaching staffs, are for these football programs. Let those guys coach. They obviously they want to be hands-on with their guys. I don't see this as a bad thing at all.
I think it's a great thing. Like you said, Joshua, people had been like creeping on this for years, and it was like the worst kept secret in college football. And they're like, well, some schools can't afford it. I'm like, when was that? When has it ever been a level playing field?
Like, some schools can't afford a waterfall in their locker room.
100%.
Yeah.
So there's different qualities of food, the dorms and all the stuff. Like, everything's going to be different at different places. But like you said, if you're paying these guys this much money, they should be able to help out. And honestly, since the NCAA is they've kept up the ruse and the guys, Joshua, that they're trying to do everything they can to help out the player, the student athlete. Like, well, if that's the case, they should be able to get more instruction. It's impossible for one offensive line coach to watch 5 guys on any given play. Now you can have your assistant O-line coach watch one half, head O-line coach watches the other. You can break that down. The receiver, like the defensive backs, usually have 2 coaches back there. Your receivers coaches, like, you can't have Brian Hartline watching an X receiver and a Z receiver that are about 45 to 50 yards apart on any given play. Yeah. And hey, coach, was my footwork good? Did I stem my route the right way? Did I break it off at the right point in time? Like, oh, actually, I'm sorry, because I was watching the Z and the H over here, so we'll get it on the film. So you couldn't get that real-time feedback. So this is going to be a massive help, that these guys can actually, instead of the quote, Joshua, shadow coaches,
Yeah.
like the league of shadows out there that are kind of helping, but not really. Now they can have some accountability. You can have more guys, because this is what they do in the NFL. You have defensive analysts, you have defensive assistants, you have an assistant O-line coach, assistant linebacker, all these guys, and they're getting paid to coach, and that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing. Also, one of the biggest lies ever told on a football field is we'll catch it in the film room, because half the time you don't have the time to go through
Yeah.
all of the reps of film anyway, neither here nor there. I also think about a situation where you got a rising star, James Laurinaitis, for example, and that guy is either grad assistant or he's a grad assistant. You got a little more latitude. Say a guy is in an analyst role like that, and he's doing a lot of work for the program. He's working with the guys off the field, but he can't actually coach. And you're trying to keep talented coaches around your building.
Yeah.
And for a while, it's like, okay, well, if I do get an opportunity where I can coach on the field, I'm probably not going to be here anymore. And it's not because I don't want to be here and I don't like being here. It's because I want to be a coach and I want to do it on the field. And so from that aspect too is, if you're a place like Ohio State, you can keep talented coaches around that are young guys, maybe looking for opportunities. They're not as ready to look around and leave because they can actually work on the craft of being an on-field coach in games and during practice.
Well, I think this is honestly a really good way to get former players back into coaching as well. Because those guys, when you're playing the NFL for a while, whatever, like those guys don't want to go back and be like at GA and be breaking down film
Well,
and doing that
some
stuff.
some of those guys ain't got the GPA to do it either.
Exactly, but they can be good on-field coaches, like, they
Yes,
can help, and you can get them involved and get them engaged, and they have knowledge that they're going to be able to share, and so you can have them come in as an assistant position coach role, which is it's what they do in the NFL. It's a
right.
professional model, and you get those guys around, and they can provide more insight, and you know what? Maybe they decide after a year that they don't wanna do it. Maybe after a year or 2 or 3, they like it, you keep them on, you can compensate them, and then if you do have a position coach, Joshua, that goes somewhere else to be a coordinator, or you have to promote a position coach to a coordinator internally because you had a coordinator leave, like, you can just bump these guys up and keep that cohesive opportunity, and now you mentioned you still only have 11 coaches that are able to go out and recruit, and I think that that's probably appropriate. You don't need 25 guys out there scouring the country, and
I
so this
agree.
kinda seems like the sweet spot that they were able to hit, and for once, I would say the NCAA, I think, landed the plane on actually instituting a rule that makes sense.
We should have a parade. It should be a week-long parade for the NCAA doing something that is not stupid. Like, we should celebrate this until the end of time.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, the only request would be from our guy, Luke Fickle, celebrate with your teammates. Don't be an individual, make sure that you're getting out there and enjoying it. And I was thinking about him today before we got Devin coming up, so we're going to get there in a second. But my son was, playing lacrosse tournament this weekend down in Cincinnati and just limited energy on the field. Like they're playing some really good teams, they're getting challenged, and this is good. I'm like, guys, when you do something good and your teammate does something good, go tell them they did a good job. Go show them some positive emotion and like get them going, like celebrate together. And I remember Fick just pounding that into our head, like, don't be an individual, go celebrate with your guys.
Dude, I got yelled at for not celebrating like early on in my career. It was a thing that went on for a couple of days. Like he took it from the practice field into the meeting room, and then back to the practice field the next day. Like, are you going to celebrate today? Or are you just going to be over there all quiet? I'm like, all right, coach, thanks.
You don't want anybody flat. Like you want your guys to be able to go out there and enjoy it and experience it. In football, let's be honest, sports in general, they're emotional, and especially
Yes.
football is an emotional game. And so you know what? We got to celebrate for the NCAA doing something right. Celebrate with your teammates. Have a great time. And we're going to celebrate Devin Brown, Ohio State quarterback, coming up here next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
At Colleague Companies, we are making a difference in the lives of children and families in our community. For 70 years, Firestone Country Club has been a stage for some of the greatest golfers in history, but it's more than just a tournament, having raised over $30 million for charitable organizations in Northeast Ohio. That's why we're proud to be the presenting sponsor of the Colleague Companies Championship at Firestone Country Club. Join us in continuing the legacy of giving back at this incredible event and help us make an even bigger impact in Northeast Ohio.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and get ready to see the PGA champions take on a Firestone Country Club South Course at the Colleague Companies Championship July 10th through 14th. Tickets start at just $25 and include access to the Colleague Infinity Zone, an interactive area featuring live music on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stage, food trucks, activations from LA Golf, X Golf, Horse Soldiers Bourbon, and so much more. One ticket, two experiences. Visit collegechampionship.com to purchase your tickets. Make it a great day. And now I am incredibly pleased to welcome in Ohio State quarterback Devin Brown, a guy that, we talked to Will Howard, we've talked to a bunch of guys here, and I'd love to get perspective, from everyone on the team. And, Devin, you've been here at Ohio State now, going on three years. What has this whole experience been like coming from the West Coast?
It's been wild. It's been a roller coaster of anything you could think of. Going in as a recruit out of high school, you always just expect the biggest and best things, and then you get here and you realize how wild it really is. But I've been nothing but blessed to be here, and it's been an awesome time for me.
You talk about a roller coaster there. I think last year you could say was a bit of a roller coaster too. You had the battle throughout training camp, dealt with some injuries through the season, probably held you back a little bit from that regard. What were the biggest things that you learned from last season?
I think the biggest thing was going through a competition and injuries. Like I stressed a lot about little things instead of just sticking to the basics of I'm playing the sport that I love, and this is an amazing atmosphere to be around. And I think I stressed too much about, I need to do certain things the right way, or, just little things that really didn't matter. I overstressed about. And so I would think the biggest thing going into this year is just, to have fun and play football, the sport I've been playing since I was, 7 years old.
Was it much of an adjustment, Devin, when you came here? I mean, being a West Coast guy, and Ohio State recruits from all across the country now. We got a couple of guys from Arizona, and you lived, both in Arizona and in Utah. Culturally fitting in, guys coming from everywhere. Was it difficult with that at all? Or, I mean, was it pretty smooth sailing?
It was pretty smooth, I would say. Everybody talks about the brotherhood and you kind of hear about it, but you really don't know what it's like until you get here. You got guys from everywhere. Thankfully, I came in with a couple guys from Arizona as well. We got Denzel, we got Lathan, we had Keon at the time. Like, there's so many people from Arizona that kind of welcomed me in to begin with, but then I mean, it didn't matter where you're from, you're a Buckeye now. And so everybody was really welcoming with big arms, and it's been an amazing time.
Well, the other thing you realize when you walk in that locker room too is a lot of really talented guys, like some of the best players in the country, all right there. What was it like for you when you kind of got out in the practice field over the last couple of years, really playing with some of these talented players?
It's been pretty awesome. I was just, talking about that with my family, like the guys that I first came in with, guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and CJ Stroud and, Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave were still here when I first got here. So kind of being around all these guys, Marvin Harrison, like you always see them and then you realize, I think that was the biggest thing for me was realizing like, wait, I'm here for a reason. Like these guys aren't, obviously they're first round draft picks and everything, but it's like, I'm right there with them. So it's pretty cool to realize where you're at with all that. But like you said, an extremely talented team. But it's been pretty amazing to be around those guys and see how they did their work and be able to mirror my stuff around them.
I mean, you mentioned the receivers and how talented that room is, and what Coach Hartline and Coach Jordan have done, with that group of guys. You have, a guy like J.J. Smith coming in this year, Carnell Tate, guys kind of emerging onto the scene. Working with all these talented guys, they're all kind of unique and different. How have you been able to kind of blend in, and what's it like when you sometimes know, like, one-on-one, I'm just throwing up to my guy, and more often than not, something good's going to happen.
Yeah, that's the thing, especially with our receiver room. We got JJ, we got Carnell, we got Emeka, we got JB, we got Bryson Rogers, Brandon Ennis. Like the list just goes on. And so when you look out there and you got JJ, you're like, okay, I got JJ one-on-one, and then as soon as they start to double him, I got Carnell one-on-one, and as soon as they start to double him, I got Emeka one-on-one. It's like it's just nonstop. It makes life a lot easier when you got guys out there like that.
Well, the flip side of that too is a lot of really talented players there on defense. And I know when I was at Ohio State, I felt like we got a lot better through that competition day in and day out. It felt like the practices were the hardest thing that we did all week long. What have you seen from their progression over the last couple of years, and how is that competition when you get on the practice field?
our defensive guys, they have something in them that it's no matter what it is, we're competing and we're going at it full speed. I think there's not a more competitive group of guys than our defensive guys. I think especially our DBs, our guys like IGB and Denzel. Those guys are probably the most competitive guys on the team, and it's been great to see them go at each other. One on one with our receivers. It's been a really, really, really good group and a really good offseason to see those guys compete in just little things like the weight room. So I'm super excited to see them get on the field again.
I'm glad you brought that up. The off season, the weight room, even after spring ball, people are like, it's done. The real work is really done for football. I mean, spring as well, but you get your winter conditioning, and then this time between spring ball and then ultimately going back to training camp. What has that been like? And I know Coach Mick loves to put those competitive elements in there. We've talked to, Denzel last week about fan bikes and everything else, the winner, loser. You guys battle back and forth. Like, who do you usually go against? And what's it been like?
It's different every week who you're competing against. It's really different every day who you're competing against. But every day there's a competition, whether it's something little like grip tests or bike sprints or agility stuff. Like this last week, my guy that I was going against was Sonny Styles. So that was a little bit of a tough matchup. Hey, I got him a couple times though. We were doing agility stuff, and it was pretty funny. But by the end of it, he was ready to be done because he's like, these quarterbacks aren't sweet. They'll get after you, and we're not going to quit on you. We're going to give it everything we got. So I had gotten him a couple times. I had a couple wins, so I was able to talk some to him.
I think that says a lot about you being a quarterback, that you're mixing it up with the linebacker. It's something I think that we all like to see there. But just from that competition standpoint, what has been your favorite thing that you've done? Like, Coach Mick does a great job, I think, of creating variation, mixing up the workouts. Like, what's been your favorite thing from this offseason?
Probably the other day, he just kind of randomly pulled this out on us. He threw out some tires on us, and we did the tire fights like we do in Madro. So I think that would be my favorite thing, because nobody knew it was coming. That's up there. Or on Fridays, we've been doing Friday workouts in the hot box. We would bring out all of our workout stuff into the indoor and do a full circuit of stuff, and having everybody as a team out there and competing with each other. I think that was great to get that spotlight with the whole team.
I mean, do you enjoy the weight room? I always joke. I mean, most quarterbacks, there are a lot of, former like baseball-ish players, guys that,
you could say it, don't love you could say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a finesse position. You guys kind of seem to enjoy getting after it. I mean, you look at the whole position group. I mean, it's 5 guys in there, and it's kind of everybody's wholly unique, but especially like, Will's a bigger guy. Lincoln's a really good athlete. I watch you guys get after it. I mean, do you enjoy lifting like that?
1000%. Yeah, I've always loved to do stuff like that. And that's been my favorite thing since I've gotten here. I came in here saying I was going to compete. So to be able to do it every day and just like stuff in the weight room and stuff like that, it's been a blast.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. We got some more questions. I want to learn a little bit about your journey, what you're majoring in. Josh always got some golf questions and what the guys do in the off season, because you got a little bit of free time now. So we'll hit you up with those next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
That's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schlegel, just how physical he was. You saw the girth and the power and everything he was bringing to the table, especially when he was a nice beefy 255 playing middle linebacker. Welcome back into the program. Still here with my guy, Devin Brown. Excited to have him here. He's on a little bit of a break right now. These guys got some time off, go really hard. The 4th of July week off, and then they've got about 3 more weeks until they get to training camp. And it's a question I always like asking. I played with the guy. Joshua was coached by him, and then they kind of brought him back out of retirement to get involved. had the privilege of being in a group with Coach Schlegel, and what has that been like for you?
Coach Schlegs is the man. I love Coach Schlegs. Every day, whether it's warm-ups, him screaming, or in the weight room screaming, there's nobody more intense than that guy, and there's nobody that cares more than that guy. And I mean, the way he looks out for our guys too. I mean, he just puts so much effort into it, and you can tell he loves what he does just by his energy and the way he acts around us. He's been nothing but the best to us.
I'm telling you right now, like there's not one person that probably coaches harder than Schlegs, but there's not a coach that loves harder than Schlegs either. It's a guy who will give you all the advice you need. He'll hug you up, but he's going to get after you during the workouts. Now, I've been asking all the guys the question, what have you been doing over the summer? And it seems like every guy we've talked to is like, oh man, I've been hitting the links. I'm golfing. Are you a part of this crew? Are you out there on the course with the rest of these guys?
Yeah, there's a little bug going on the team. It kind of started last year, and it spread like wildfire. I mean, that's what everybody's doing, which is good. I mean, it's great to get outside and do all those things. And I actually played. I think that was Monday. I played in that Life Sports outing, so it was good. I got to play. Me and Josh Fryer played with Mike Doss and Andy Katzmeyer. Is that how you say his last name?
Yep.
I believe I'm saying that correctly. But yeah, so that was a good little foursome that we had. And then actually Braxton and Denzel got to join in. So we had 6 guys in a group. But it's been great. I'm not great, but I'm getting better and starting to learn more and more as I go.
Yeah, that's tremendous. It's a great team building thing. And like you mentioned, those guys all kind of get together, you get to spend a couple hours, have conversations, talk. And everybody's always talked about you. And one of the greatest attributes you have is your leadership, your ability to relate and connect. Kind of where does all of that stem from?
I think it just kind of started at being a kind of a coach's son at a young age. My dad kind of pushed that along from me as a kid, and just kind of naturally came to me. I would say I was privileged to go to 3 different high schools in high school because I was able to, find different people in each situation and still be able to become a leader in a short amount of time. So I don't know. I think it just kind of naturally came along.
You talk about 3 different high schools, certainly an adjustment. There was some adjusting in the Woody this offseason as well. Coach Day taking on a little bit more of a CEO role. You bring in Chip Kelly, who is one of the wonderful offensive minds in college football. What has that dynamic been like with that adjustment? Obviously, and Coach Day, but also working with Coach Kelly now as kind of the new face in the building.
Yeah, it's definitely been different. Coach Day used to be in every quarterback meeting before every practice, and now we really don't see him until we're out on the field. But Coach Kelly has been amazing. My relationship with him has been great. He recruited me to UCLA out of high school, so we kind of already had a connection. Him and Coach Fry is pretty funny. When they first got here, both kind of talked about me being at UCLA visiting, and then next thing we know, we're at Ohio State together. But like you said, the offensive knowledge in that building is second to none, and it's been really amazing to learn from those guys.
I mean, I feel like, Ryan is obviously tremendous in the pass game and really, really talented offensive mind. People always looked at Chip, I think, when he was at Oregon as kind of a pass guy because they ran the hurry up. But one of the things that I've always loved is, how creative and innovative with him running the football and how he tries to design up run scheme plays and gap scheme runs. I mean, do we feel like there's maybe a little more added emphasis, with him being more of the primary single collar there with running the football?
1,000%. And that's kind of the saying in the Wooding is to win games, you got to run the ball and stop the run. And so Coach Kelly's been doing a good job of installing our run game. Our running backs are very, very talented. And so we got quarterbacks that can run too. So it's going to be a pretty dynamic offense.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? Because you mentioned it. You got Trey and you got Quinshawn transferred in. You ran through the wide receivers in the last segment. Obviously, mobile quarterback room. Like how do you make sure that everybody can get the right amount of touches when it comes to game day? It's a lot of mouths to feed on that offense.
For sure. And, I think a lot of people would worry about that is guys, being concerned about not getting the ball enough, but guys just want to win and guys love each other enough to not care and not be selfish about that. We just want to win.
Yeah, we had Trey on. It was amazing, his talk about how, when he said Coach Day, Ryan had called him when they were looking at bringing in Quinshawn, and his response and just the humility and his faith-based answer was remarkable. And you guys have some unbelievable guys on the team. And I was privileged probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, to meet a guy who I always looked up to, and was like a role model of mine growing up, with Joe Germain. And then I find out when you commit here, you end up coming here, that Joe Germain was your high school coach. What was it like playing for Joe Germain? And then how much of a Buckeye push did he have on you?
I can't thank Coach Jermaine enough for everything that he's done in my life. Making me a better man, making me a better football player. His family's incredible. I mean, just one of the best guys you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, super down to earth. I mean, just will love you and take you in no matter what the situation is. And like I said, I can't thank him enough. But I talk to his younger son Jack all the time. His son plays quarterback. He played actually for him this last year out of Mountain View, which was his alma mater. But yeah, I mean, I love Coach Jermaine. He's been the best to me and my family. But then really when I first started getting recruited by Ohio State, obviously he had, a little bit of bias for that decision, but really didn't push me at all. He just wanted me to go do what was best for me.
All right, Bobby kind of mentioned this, but taking a little break here in the summer, you'll get back to work, and then training camp's right around the corner. And I feel like summer is a really reflective time for a lot of players, kind of get to figure out what your plan of attack is. At Ohio State, everything is under a microscope, but in particular, being one of the quarterbacks, it's difficult. How do you find that balance in your life, like personal life-wise, football-wise, and then just keeping everything straight?
Yeah, I feel like a big thing for guys is not looking at social media. I think a lot of guys kind of get tied up into thinking who said what or who thinks is going to be the guy. I mean, at the end of the day, what really matters is what's said in that building and what is said in those meeting rooms. And so, as I've gotten older and more mature with that stuff, it's been a lot easier. And I'm just ready to go, be myself again and just go play football and stay injury free and just get back to the basics.
So we were talking a little bit offline. Your finance major, you had talked about potentially wanting to get into commentary as well when you were done playing. I mean, at some point in time, everybody's done, whether you're 24, 16, 34, Tom Brady 45, or whatever the heck he was. But you got a lot of life left to live. I mean, what do you kind of envision doing in your post-career playing days?
Yeah, like I said, I would love to do color commentating. I'd love to just speak ball. I mean, I've been playing the sport, like I said, since I was 7 years old. So to be able to speak it would just be even better. Obviously, playing would be the first thing, but like you said, it runs out for everybody, and everybody's got to hang up those cleats. But yeah, getting a finance major. I'm a numbers guy, so I like to do stuff like that and handle my own money, everything like that. But just didn't feel like, getting a communications degree was totally necessary to be able to speak football.
Sounds
Absolutely.
like the Bobby Carpenter path right there. You might be teaching a finance class at Ohio State one of these days. You never know. But I will say, if you want to get into sports media, you pick the right school. There's a lot of Buckeyes doing it. So you're on the right path there.
Absolutely, man. We're excited to have you on here. We appreciate it, Devin. I know you guys got some time off, so enjoy your week here, the 4th. You're going to give you getting back to work, more of an OTA feel, but I know Coach Mickey Marotti is going to have his hand on everything. So, dude, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. Enjoy the rest of your week. All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
All right. More up next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
It's just, that's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schlegel, just how physical he was. You saw the girth and the power and everything he was bringing to the table, especially when he was a nice beefy 255 playing middle linebacker. Man, how great was Devin Brown? One of my favorites, Joshua. I know we say it each and every week that we have a player on, and you're like, man, that young man was very, very impressive, and what a testament he is to the Ohio State program.
And he doesn't just talk it, he walks it too, because that's a guy, I think, in a lot of programs that probably would have been looking at the transfer portal, but he wants to compete. He talked about the competition. The man's ready to go, and I love it.
And that's the thing, like you mentioned that, the competition, like Devin brought that up multiple times. All the guys have mentioned competition, especially, you were under Mickey Marotti. They try to simulate that in the offseason. They try to do it the best they can. So you're always in a competitive environment. So like, if you think you're just going to come in here and, hey, you know what, we're going to award you a job and there it is, and it can never be taken from you. Like that's a false narrative that's going to be in your head. So this is a much, much better situation. Like, and he's a guy that loves the weight room, loves to compete, and it's no mistake why I think he's going to be in the thick of this. And regardless of how much he ends up playing, whether he's the starter or not this year, like I think there will always be a role like the backup quarterback for every team, as you were part of one that needed 3 guys to win a national championship.
Yeah.
Like there's a role for that guy where he will have to win a game. Even Kenny, when he was here backing up Braxton.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, you mentioned it, right? Like you could go down the list on guys that had to step up in moments. Even Dwayne Haskins, when he was a backup, had to go in for JT. Like those are the moments that are really important. And the idea that he is a rugged dude, like hard-nosed, tough guy, like you want that in your quarterback room, regardless of where it's coming from. So I think there's a ton of value there. But I agree with the idea that there's going to be a moment, an opportunity, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and it's that's why I kind of ask because everybody loves him. Like it's that tough ruggedness. I mean, he's a humble guy, so you know, like what makes you such a charismatic and great leader? Well, like connect with everybody, go compete your face off, and go against linebackers like Sonny Styles, who, like Lathan Ransom said, he goes, I go against Sonny. I've done that. He goes, he's quote built diff. Like he's a tough guy to beat in anything. So I love that Devin's going against it and not backing down. And that's how you earn the respect
Is
of your
that what the kids
teammates.
are saying nowadays? Built diff?
Oh yeah, my daughter dropped that line on me like 2 months ago, 3
Interesting.
months ago. I'm like,
It's a new
built
one for
diff. I'm
me.
like, if you think you're built diff, number one, you can just say thank you, Dad. Number two, being built diff, like that's a mentality. Like we're gonna develop that. We're just not gonna arrive on, hey, I'm better than other people. No, no, no. We're gonna work on a daily basis to develop that mentality.
I feel like I'm missing out on some of this slang. I'm in that part of my life where I'm not hanging around enough young people. Like I'm around people older than me,
Yeah.
and it's really valuable, but I need to get the youth back in there.
You say that, but it will scare you. I promise you that. The only good thing in life is that I get to be around those guys at Ohio State, and they anchor it for me on
Yeah.
what we should be. But neither here nor there. We've got some rankings that are released. EA Sports, we talked about the stadiums, the toughest places to play, the environments there. They've also put out their rankings for the new college football game. Overall, Georgia number 1 with a 93, Buckeyes number 2, or Georgia 95, Buckeyes number 2 with a 93, excuse me, tied with Oregon, who's at a 93. Bama is at 4th with a 92, tied with Texas, who also has that 92. Clemson and Notre Dame 6 and 7 at 90, also with LSU at a 90, Penn State 88, Utah 88. Michigan is right outside it at 11. And those are total composite rankings. Any issues with that, Joshua, when you see it?
I feel like that is how I would view a lot of these teams coming into the season, right? Like I think a lot of people view Georgia as the best team in the country. Ohio State and Oregon are probably right there. Maybe a little bit of separation between Texas and Alabama, but I don't have an issue with them being like right together. Folks think that this could be a year for Notre Dame. If we're looking at the Michigan angle of it, I think 11 is probably appropriate. They got a ton of questions on offense. I think that they might be one of the best defenses in the country this year. So certainly it makes a lot of sense. Where I had a little bit of an issue was when you get to the breakdowns of the rankings on either side of the football for some of these schools.
So there's where we're going to go. You mentioned the defense. Ohio State has the number 1 rated defense in all of college football as per EA Sports this year. And number 5 rated offense. Georgia, Oregon, Bama, and Texas are ahead of Ohio State. And I think that might be a reflection of the quarterback position as much as anything. The fact that it might be a little unsettled when you look at Georgia having Carson Beck, Oregon having Dylan Gabriel, who transferred in, Bama having Jaden Milroe returning, and then Texas obviously having the former mullet man himself down there. So those are all settled. Ohio State, maybe a little uncertainty right now still.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest thing is quarterback. But I look running back, check. Wide receiver, one of the best rooms in the country, check. Tight end is going to be a little bit of a question, but I think it's a talented room. And then the offensive line, like how do they develop? And I think that's more of a question to me, honestly, than what the quarterback situation is going to look like. But I'm there. On the defensive list, I think they had Michigan's defense down there somewhere like 7. like kind of in the middle of that top 10 there. And I would push back on that because they got 3 guys that are probably first rounders. And so I think there's a little bit of detail miss. Tennessee's offense is not up there and as one of the top offenses, probably a little bit of a question there with the quarterback, but I think they're going to be good. So I question some of this.
Some of it too, and I don't have the exact rankings here, but LSU being a 90, I was talking to my man Jacob Hester on our XM show, and he goes, they have LSU's defense like in the teens. He's like, and I'm not saying that can't happen, but I got to see something better than what I saw last year when they were like the 90th ranked defense. They have USC there. USC and LSU both have higher rated defenses than Iowa. And Jacob Hester goes, I'm going to tell you what, if there's one thing I know that's not true, he's like, Iowa may not be able to do anything on offense, but those guys on defense carry the water now.
Yeah, I think they're looking at both of those schools, and I don't agree with it being higher than Iowa. That's crazy, but they're probably looking at 2 schools like talented on the defensive side of the ball and new coordinators. And, you know, Baker, who came over from Mizzou, who's at LSU, was one of the best DCs in the country a year ago. D'Anton Lynn over there for USC, coming over from UCLA. I think they're expecting a step. I don't trust it personally, but I could see how they could expect it.
So they haven't dropped out the individual player rankings yet. So we'll probably get into that next week. As of note, the last 99 player ranking was Jadeveon Clowney back in 2014. The last 2 Buckeyes, or the only 2 Buckeyes to ever be ranked 99, were James Laurinaitis, current Ohio State linebacker coach, in 2009, and Chris Gamble, who was doing his best, Travis Hunter back then in 2004. So we'll see if there are any 99s for Ohio State. Possibly could be, maybe not. Very, very tough. And I'm curious to see where they have the true freshman J.J. Smith rated as well, because it's going to be a tough eval for a guy you have no film on yet. But if they can alter those during the year, he might be one that gets leveled up a little bit, Coach. All right, we're going to take another quick break, but coming up, we got Tailgate Talk brought to you by friends over at Garage Beer. We're going to answer some of your questions, maybe even dive into the original silver bullets as well. That's coming up next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
At College Companies, we are making a difference in the lives of children and families in our community. For 70 years, Firestone Country Club has been a stage for some of the greatest golfers in history, but it's more than just a tournament, having raised over $30 million for charitable organizations in Northeast Ohio. That's why we're proud to be the presenting sponsor of the College Companies Championship at Firestone Country Club. Join us in continuing the legacy of giving back at this incredible event and help us make an even bigger impact in Northeast Ohio.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
Welcome back into the show. And now we got Tailgate Talk, our favorite segment where we get to answer your questions about college football, the Buckeyes, really whatever tickles your fancy. But Tailgate Talk is brought to you by our friends over at Garage Beer. Yeah, that's right here. My buddies at Garage Beer. Garage Beer, it's perfect. It's the perfect beer for you all summer long for all your get-togethers. Cookout, Garage Beer. Family reunion, Garage Beer. Doing yard work, well, Garage Beer. So go buy some Garage Beer. It's beer that tastes like beer. Beer-flavored beer. How about that? And they also have it in lime. It's exotic, and it's tremendous. So, Joshua, outside of having some delicious Garage Beer, one of the questions was brought up that on Saturday evening, they were replaying the Rose Bowl, Ohio State, 1997 against, oh my goodness, it's Pat Tillman and the Arizona State Sun Devils. And Jake the Snake is their quarterback. Very, very talented team. And someone goes, man, that team was loaded. And it got me thinking a little bit because Chris Olave celebrated his 24th birthday last week at the end of June. Chris Olave is the current career touchdowns leader, I believe, with 35, if I'm not mistaken. for Ohio State. He surpassed David Boston, who had that record for 10, probably 16, 17 years until Olave broke it. David Boston, very talented. But let me go through some of the guys on that team for you. On offense, David Boston was one of the wide receivers as a true freshman, I might add. To Demetrius Stanley, was one of the wide receivers, very, very talented as well. D. Miller, one of the other wide receivers. Joe Germain, who we talked about with Devin Brown, he was the quarterback. Really, really good quarterback in college. Played a number of years in the league. Won a Super Bowl with his backup in St. Louis. But Orlando Pace, possibly one of the best offensive tackles all time, was on that team as well. On the offensive side, Michael Wiley was the running back. You go look at the defense, though, and this is where I really want to lean in. Mike Vrabel.
Yep.
Luke Fickell. Finkus. Nael Diggs. Andy Katzenmoyer at linebackers. Greg Belisari. Their secondary. Young Antoine Winfield. They had Sean Springs. They had Ahmed Plummer. Damon Moore. All of the corners that were playing were first-round corners. Ty Howard played in the NFL. Winfield Garnett played a number of years in the NFL. Like one of the Rob Kelly, who was a second-round draft pick out of the Saints, free safety. Ryan Miller played. They had unbelievable depth. I don't know if there's been a defense that's been that deep and talented, from guys who are sophomores playing to the seniors, that we've seen maybe until this year.
I can't really push back on that. Even some of the defenses that I played on, like I think top flight, like really good. Some guys that were some standouts, but like you start running through the names and just like think about the accomplishments of some of these guys. Like we're talking about some of the best that ever played at Ohio State, like period, point blank. We're on that defense. And I think after this year, when you start talking about legacies of some of the players that are playing at Ohio State, they start putting themselves in that conversation of where do we want to rank them in terms of some of the greats.
And Lathan Ransom came out, and we were talking on my radio show on The Fan in the mornings, and he said, he's like, we want to be the best defense, talking about goals. Like, I want to be the best defense in college football and best defense in Ohio State history. And he's like, no offense. I'm like, no offense. Like, that's, if you're not lobbying for that, if that's not your goal coming here, like, you came to the wrong program. And so I love that these guys have these lofty expectations and these lofty goals. And it's not just out there, like they're going to go there, like, and understand that it's a daily commitment to try to get to it.
It's interesting because being at a place like Ohio State, being like just a guy, when you talk about the program, you're probably a pretty good player still because you got to be pretty good to be there. But nobody's trying to be just a guy, right? Like I think that's exactly what you're encapsulating there. I love hearing guys talk about that. I think that the goals need to be set high, and I think the expectation needs to be there because it informs the way that you're supposed to work. It informs the way that you're supposed to play. It informs the way that you're supposed to come together as a group. And the thing that we've both seen from talking to guys on this roster throughout this offseason, they're putting the work in, right? Like they are dedicated to the things that they say. It's unfortunate when you get around a group of guys, and this happened a little bit for us in 15, where I think guys had felt like they arrived, and so the work maybe took a step back. And we're saying all the things that we want to do because we know what the expectation is. But I don't know if we always did the things we needed to do to get there. And these guys, part of it is they hadn't achieved everything they came here to achieve. And that's a hell of a motivator. But they're doing the work that is necessary to become one of the great defenses in the history of this program.
Well, what success does, I mean, success is, someone described to me as, it's like martinis. It's going to relax you. And so for a long time, success perpetuated success here. And then you have 3 years where your goals aren't achieved. You have 3 years where we talk about brotherhood. You talk about, the big lofty expectations and things that you want to have. And when you leave and you want to have banners hanging up and you want to have trophies with your class and your name on them, like that really wasn't hitting the way that they had wanted to. And so for those guys to lean in now, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where a lot of them came back, and believe me, Travion came back, Mecca came back. There were guys on the offensive side that did too. And Devin Brown, as you mentioned, like he's a guy that, you brought in, Will Howard could have dipped out and transferred and said, I'm going to go compete somewhere else where they're not bringing guys to compete with me. I mean, those aren't really the guys that you want there. And so the fact that they've been leaning in on that has been really tremendous. But I look at this defense, they have 4 defensive linemen to me that are NFL players. You have linebackers that are NFL players. You have your corners where when you were here, it seemed like every year, every corner that came through that started, you were going to be a first-round draft pick.
Yep.
And so Davidson, he's got that mentality. Jordan Hancock, he's got that mentality. Denzel, he's got that mentality. You could hear it on here. The young guy, Jermaine Matthews, who I love to watch, is all Schlegel said he's got like 18 little pit bulls inside of him. He's like, they call him that dog use. He's got like 18 of them and they're just always clawing, trying to get their way out. Like he is about it. He's competitive. Those guys get after it. And they all want to be the best. And then you're like adding guys, like Lathan Ransom. You have Caleb Downs who comes in. Like they're NFL guys all over the place, about 18 positions, 18, 19 spots deep. So you feel good about it.
And let me tell you what that does is when you are in that environment, it makes you make a decision. It was a decision I had to make early on in my career is you decide that you are going to become one of them, right? You're going to be an aspirational guy. You're going to put the work in. You are going to make a decision to do the things to be great. Or you decide to hit that portal. You get out because you can't stand to be around these people whose mentality is maniacal about being great, and they can't stand to be around you because you are the complete opposite. And so I think it's where you want to get as a program is you have guys in there on a daily basis making a decision about who they're going to be.
Mediocrity hates greatness and excellence and greatness, they hate mediocrity. Like that's the reality of it.
Yep.
And you can't escape it because there's always going to be that friction. If you're content where you are, everybody else trying to pull on you you're going to hate it. And the guys always pulling on you and you resisting, they're going to hate that as well on the other side. So hopefully we get that going. But that was one of the great teams that I think they didn't have the ending that they wanted, but they did in the Rose Bowl, didn't beat Michigan. Hopefully all those things align for this team this year. Coming up, we will close the show with our final segments and a parting goodbye to longtime AD Gene Smith.
Well, how do they know I'm doing this? Did somebody leak this out?
It's social media.
Oh.
It's just that's the way social media works now.
I thought maybe you were just running that yap.
Welcome to Big Play, a sports media team that started back in 2014, and now we're not in a garage. Look at us, incorporating some of Cleveland's favorite sports personalities, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland. Coming to you live from the shores of Lake Erie and Burke Lakefront Airport, join Team Big Play for all the best sports talk in Ohio. Check us out on social media at Big Play, bringing you fun and compelling content from downtown Cleveland.
Anthony Schlegel, just how physical he was. You saw the girth and the power and everything he was bringing to the table, especially when he was a nice beefy 255 playing middle linebacker. All right, final segment of the program and final week of work for Gene Smith as he is now onto his retirement. 19 years at Ohio State. What a great career. Ross Bjork, his era starts on July 1st. A lot of stuff that's going on. Joshua, your thoughts on Gene officially now being done, I think moving out to Arizona, and then Ross taking over in the midst of a lot of different changes ultimately happening in college football.
Yeah, I've said this about Gene Smith, and I'll say it one more time here. He's the right kind of guy. He's one of the best people you could be around, and I think he was the right type of administrator for where collegiate athletics was at the time. He's a guy who was a former athlete. He coached a little bit, started off at small school in the MAC, and then made his way up to Ohio State, and really wanted to be a part of the journey of the student athlete. Certainly appreciate it. I look at Ross now and he has to make decisions that Gene does not have to make. And there are difficult decisions in this new era. You mentioned NIL, revenue share. How does that affect the different programs? How does that affect the size of the athletic department? These are all things he's going to have to consider. I got to meet him back in April. And the one thing that I can say is he's got a plan. And he's a guy who wants to be ahead of the curve. He wants to be aggressive. And I think that's where you have to be right now. So I'm excited to see what that looks like.
You know what? That is tremendous. We appreciate your time, Joshua. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Devin Brown. Like, subscribe, comment. We love to hear it all. Tune in next time on the Bobby Carpenter Show.